Penny Jake, the tribe has spoken.
Fuck you, Kevin.
Aw, fuck you too, sweetie.
I'm JJ, one of the original Tribe of Nerds members. You can catch me on Marvel, Pokemon, and other gaming podcasts.
What up? It's Josh, resident superhero nerd, but I also dabble in the occasional super villain as well.
Some may know me as the Chaos Gremlin, but really I'm just Joe King.
Pikachu, use Volt Tackle! Good job, Pikachu!
On the Tribe of Nerds.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds, here to start our Deal or No Deal Island Season 2 coverage with Kristin and Shane. So super excited to have you both here to talk about this. We didn't get to cover Season 1 of Deal or No Deal Island, so this should be fun to cover Season 2.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm excited. This is fun because, I mean, especially for Shane and I, which we're going to get a lot into, but like having somebody that we know very well on the show too, it makes it a lot more fun. So I'm excited to dive into this.
Yeah, well, it makes it fun. It makes it stressful too. But I'm excited for this because, yes, we know someone. Yes, my favorite Survivor player of all time is on the season. And also, DONDI is just like a fun show in general. I feel like the concept is so unique. And I don't know how someone thought of this concept, but it's really unique. And like, there's so many ways to look at the game and how to play it. And I feel like that just makes for a fun time.
Yeah, there's a lot involved, a lot of variables, because there's strategy, yes, but there's also a lot of luck going on.
For sure. I mean, I think I mentioned to you guys already, but for the viewers, like, this is like Deal or No Deal that we all fell in love with back, like, with Howie. And then it's like Big Brother because you kind of have this, like, bottom tier that can be up for elimination. But then you're on the island, so it's like a little bit of Survivor. So they're throwing literally everything possible into the show.
And a little bit of the challenge, too, because there's challenges and, like, the winners have the power.
Yeah. It's honestly just kind of... They were like, how many shows can we throw into one? And then we're just going to call it Deal or No Deal Island.
Yeah, because I got my parents to watch last night, and my dad, one of the criticisms was this feels like they put a bunch of different concepts together. And so I was like, yeah, that's fair. I was a little shocked that my dad was confused by certain things, but maybe it's because everything is kind of squashed together, so it doesn't make as much sense to some people as maybe it should.
I don't know. I love it as a show and a concept, and another mainstream podcast out there I was listening to loves it. Like, they were hyping this thing up like crazy. Yeah. And also, I think Joe Manganiello is an incredibly good host. And just from this episode, like, he's getting much better even than he was last season. Like, I feel like he brings something different. Like, Julie Chen is just like on Big Brother, you know, whatever she is, just like very stoic and like by the book. Jeff Probst is a little like, I'm in charge, you're not in charge. Joe is like very friendly, and like the challenge is TJ Lavin, who's maybe a little too friendly, and Joe's like friendly and like on their side, but like he's also strict when he needs to. Like, it's a really nice dynamic I like.
Don't get me started on my boyfriend Joe. Listen, we all know that I love my Shamar and I love all my people, but like, Joe, like, I couldn't be on this island. I would be like so distracted by Joe. I'd be like, oh, I was supposed to like go get a case. My bad. No, I agree with you. Like, Joe is one of those. I when I heard he was going to be hosting, I first of all was like, yay, I get to see more Joe. But then I was also like, how's this going to go? Because he's like an actor. He's not really a host, you know? So I think he's done a very extremely good job of being a host. And I agree with you, Shane.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think Joe has been really good. I mean, he has the outgoing, friendly side, but then I feel like he has some of the strict, like Jeffisms as well. I mean, he'll call people out for sucking as well. We saw that
Yeah.
last night, um, this episode. So, yeah, that's what I do like about Joe. And as Aaron said last season, it's the guy from Spider-Man. Thompson.
And me, I'm like, it's the guy from Magic Mike. Yay, me.
Me, I'm like, it's just some guy. 'Cause I didn't know anything about him before.
Now listen, if he starts doing a striptease to, Backstreet Boys on here, then we're golden. We're so set for Dondi forever. So I mean, jumping into the episode, like we're getting that boat right over. I even called it out while we were watching last night. I'm like, oh, Joe took over Jeff with the cool iconic entrance on the helicopter. And then like we kind of start seeing some of these characters come into play. Obviously, some that we are familiar with, like, the Parvati of Survivor, and then of course David, and then of course we know Dixon. But then there were other characters. I know for me originally, and I know we're going to talk a lot about some of these people, but I was like, oh, look, a redhead. I got a root for the fellow redhead. And then like later, we'll get to it all. But so what were your guys' kind of first impressions of this cast?
I have some. I will say one thing before I give my impressions is sometimes we kind of have to think about, like, it's easy to judge at home, but then when you're on the island, like, there's so much going on that your decision-making process is different. So, like, I always keep that in the back of my mind. However, I feel like my impression of somebody where they showed him very early, I'm like, this is a bad sign that you're showing him doing this. Luke, of all people, when the way he was interacting with Parvati and like, this is not good. Like, he clearly didn't know who she was, which, like, yes, not everyone watches Survivor, but like, she was just on the Traders and she's a pretty big name out there. But had no clue who he was, and like, she was just roping that guy in and taking him for a ride, and you could tell that this was not going to be good. Just the way he was interacting, I'm like, yeah, what's going to happen later makes sense now about how he approaches the game.
Yeah. Luke is interesting. I mean, right away we have the interaction with Parvati, and then we're gonna get his interesting Wisconsin Midwest accent where it's just funny. I live in the Midwest and I definitely don't have that thick of an accent. So.
Well, Wisconsin's its own section. They're like weird stuff. But no, I mean, again, Shane, that was a great point to bring up, because as fans and stuff, like, we do see some very toxic fans out there and that are just extremely mean. You did not get picked on the show. You can think of how you would do things, but things are going to change for sure. Of course, they're going to cast these characters, which, I mean, there are some on here. But yeah, no, Luke, that was almost painful to watch. It was like, that Black Widow, she was ready to pounce. She was ready. She's like, yes, reel you in. You're mine. And so it was fun to see Parvati jump right into her Parvati ways.
Yeah.
But speaking of Parvati, in what planet did she think she could hide her identity? I'm almost like, you should just come out and say it.
The thing about this is one of my things that, like, I even said when we were watching last night, is I'm like, what are you doing? You, like, this is like a moment where they all know you've talked to. How she was like, yeah, I talked to this one. They said they recognize me, but they won't say anything. Oh, I talked to this one. They said they recognize me. That's the entire cast, Parvati. Just say you're on Survivor.
Yeah, I can see this going poorly. Does it mean she'll get taken out? Who knows? But like, I can see something happening where it's gonna come out. If anyone, I could see Dixon doing it for sure, because like, big mouth, you know that. David, I could absolutely see doing it. Who knows who else would? And the funny part about it is, like, if it comes out, she can easily go, well, you guys don't know who David is. David's this huge person. And I could also see them all being like, well, what if you're just saying that? Like, okay, maybe he was on Australian Survivor, but you're probably just trying to paint him as a huge target when he's like some nobody. Which, like, how is David a nobody? But
I think that you bring up a good point, and I'm sure, Jake, I'm excited to hear your kind of thoughts on this too. But I think it is going to come out like you're saying. but I think that that's when she's going to rat out David. I don't think David's going to be the one to rat her out because she is the only one that that we're seeing knows that he is from Australian Survivor. So I think he's obviously has a little bit more to lose here than she does. So I think that he would not be the one to rat her out because then she could just reverse it right off.
Right.
But knowing Parvati to get all of this stuff off of her, she's very good at doing that. She's going to throw David right under the bus.
Yes. And then it's just up to do the others believe it? Because if I didn't know anything and I was there, I would think like, okay, she's saying he's on Australian Survivor. That makes sense. He probably was. I'm sure he'll counter and be like, oh, but I got 10th place. As he did on his first season.
Yes.
And she'll be like, no, he's the best player ever. And they'll be like, no, that's Tony or that's you or Sandra or whoever. Like, there's no way anyone could do that. And they'll be like, okay, he didn't tell us he was on Survivor, but like, whatever. He's not Parvati.
Yeah.
Maybe they believe him. Who knows? Because it's funny. They showed in the intro, like Dixon being like, I'm a huge reality TV fan. I know all this stuff. Well, he doesn't know Australian Survivor.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like he doesn't know who David is. And if he doesn't, and they kind of focus on him as being the big reality TV person, then like, who does?
Right. Jake, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, so on Parvati and specifically, and we'll get into the thoughts on like David and Dixon shortly as well. But for me, Parvati, I've never been like the biggest Parvati fan. I think part of that is like she's been on so much, and you can say the same thing about Boston Rob as well. I think she's interesting and she's very good at the game. I think she is rightfully a Survivor legend. But I don't know. I'm just kind of like not as into Parvati as some other people are, but I get in like every time I've seen her, there's always people. She has this way of drawing people in. And we just talked about she did that to Luke and just drew him in. She blew her little fairy dust, as she said, and hypnotized him. And so, I mean, she's very good at what she does. I just don't. It's just more of like, I guess I'm just kind of tired of seeing her all the time. So, yeah.
And we can see.
Well, I don't know. For most people though, like on the episode, they talked about getting wet from Joe, figuratively and literally, when he came in on the helicopter. They talked about getting wet from Sydney and David and all that stuff. You know, whatever. David and Parvati forming an alliance and working together, that is like the definition of getting wet.
Yeah, that's like the Deadpool quote from Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm soaking wet right now.
Like, say what you want about either of them, but like, it's incredible to see them together. And then, yeah, like Parvati isn't like my number one favorite Survivor ever, but she's up there. Like, she's a good player and she's very entertaining TV.
Yeah. Well, and I think it shows their experience a little bit too, to recognize that they are probably two of the biggest threats there on that island, and that they will need each other at least for the time being, before like, you know, cutting each other's throats.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. I will say I'm newer into the Australian Survivor. I'm really enjoying David. I know that you guys were a huge fan. Like, Shane, he's your favorite. I could not stop laughing. He was hilarious.
Yes.
The entire episode. I'm more excited to watch Australian Survivor with him in it now. Like, I was excited to watch his seasons anyway, but he had me laughing so hard. I mean, just like his certain things that he would say and the way he does his confessionals and like even just talking to people, I'm already a fan. So yeah. I'm excited. It's fun to see what you guys were already saying, but like outside of the Survivor element, to just see what he's doing. So I'm excited to see David throughout this season.
Yeah, I like David as well. He's hilarious. The way a lot of his confessionals, like, he'll even like relate to the audience by making like these pop culture references in every confessional. Like, I'm the pop culture guy, so like I relate to that, and so I will laugh at a lot of the things he says. I mean, this is the guy that, I mean, he made Three Stooges references last night. And then, you know, in his Australian Survivor seasons, he'd like use hidden immunity idols as Iron Man repulsors. And like, I mean, David's just fantastic. And even in his seasons, when you go back and watch his Australian Survivor seasons, Kristin, he literally makes like it's probably between him and King George for like one of the best moves in Survivor history. Because the move he makes in All Stars like very early on is incredible.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to watch. So I know we're gonna probably dive more into these characters, if you will, a little bit as we get to know them more. But like right off the bat, we're seeing some new twists here. They've got this pyramid of whatever he called it. I can't even remember the name of it. Where we're seeing
Pyramid scheme.
there, and so they had to break themselves up into little tribes, if you will. And so they had to decide where they were gonna go. Shane, Jake, what side would you have picked?
Ooh.
So it's hard to say too, because like I'm someone at least that will fall for peer pressure or whatever, and I feel like was definitely some of that going on. But I just knowing me, I probably would have gone the safe route and done like the low value cases, because you know that, well, you should have known in a normal world that the people with the red cases aren't going to steal from you. So you at least know what your total is, and you just have to hope via luck that the people with the red cases steal the wrong cases and get in the bottom.
Yeah.
Who would have thought what happened? But yeah, so that's my logic there.
Yeah, I probably would have also, tried to play it safer and go for low value. I guess it has risks in itself, but yeah, just anything that I guess would be safer for like the early going. I think there's times to take risks, and I think early on is not the time to do that.
See, for me, sitting here in that moment of having that decision, I don't think it's more so the calculated risk that I'm looking at, is I'm looking at what I necessarily have to do. I'm scared of heights. I'm definitely not doing a zip line because I would fall and like crack my head and be off the island in 5 seconds. Like they'd be like, "You weren't supposed to let go yet," and I'd be like, "Oops." And then I'm certainly not jumping over wobbly things because I would totally face plant like Sydney, and like I'd be unconscious and drown. So I'm looking at, for me, it was not the calculated risk at that moment. It was like, okay, it's gonna take me longer, but let me just like take a little stroll through the jungle. But
No, that's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, as Shane, though, brought up, we had some interesting things. David, very early on, we saw David, Luke, and I can't say your name. Tell me out, guys, because you know
Seychelles.
I butchered it all. Seychelles, right? Seychelles?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll get it down. I called her seashell. There were so many things coming out of my mouth last night. They chose the red cases. Then we had Parvati. We had Letty, we had
Sydney, Philip,
and who was the fourth?
Philip.
They go for the four cases that were the higher ones, and then of course the rest of them, including Dixon, they go through the jungle for those other cases. David right off the bat was like, "Stay up here, watch where they're gonna pick like what cases." And of course Luke was like, "Oh, zip line, woo!" And he's ready to go. And then I thought for a second there that Seychelles she was listening to him because she was sitting there for a minute. I don't know if she slipped off. It seemed like she misheard him, that like she thought he said to go and she just took off. But then of course they start realizing what David is doing. So they are coming up with a plan. The other ones are living their life. They're like, okay, we have our cases. Let's just go chill. Luke's over there, not a care in the world. He's like, where's the tea at? And then we have David that's trying to be very calculated in this decision, but also I don't know why he didn't think that there would be something sinister about that they would go around the corner and switch it up.
Exactly. That is a little amazing to me because David is so smart and innovative, but like in Australian Survivor, we've seen him make these blunders as well, where like he'll come up with like the most amazing plan and then like not think about a certain aspect of it. But one thing that I found interesting, at least, because clearly he's trying to hide his identity, and we'll see how long that lasts. In my opinion, like this is the greatest player of all time, like a Survivor, whatever reality show, greatest ever. By coming up with this strategy, like 5 minutes in the game, is he putting a target on himself by being like, "Oh, look, this guy's already being so smart." Turns out for him, he had 2 people that made some questionable decisions on his team. So chances are, if they're making those decisions, they're probably not going to pick up on the fact that he's actually smart. But I don't know. At first, I'm like, shouldn't he lay back a little bit?
Yeah, For me, I just loved David being up at top and kind of like the golden god presiding over the entire kingdom and like watching everybody. Like I just found that so like poetic, I guess, of just like how that went down. I feel bad like he's stuck with these two goobers doing something they shouldn't be doing, and everybody else is at least smart enough to realize what he's trying to do, and so they switch up the cases, which was a good strategy clearly, and it worked out for them. So
Yeah, I mean, most certainly, and then I mean, now we're here in the jungle where everybody's showing their cases. Obviously, Joe starts with the middle group, if you will. Of course, they're big numbers, so I mean, they could definitely do some damage here. But then we see, of course, Luke, good old Luke, makes the decision he has the steal case, and he's going to go steal a case. I said this last night when we were watching this that I could see where he was in his head thinking, we don't know, like, we aren't guaranteed the million over here. So we could get their highest number down here and potentially get another one. But again, if you took the 5 seconds that it would take to actually like put this into a thought process, you would realize that even their two lowest cases, we talked about this, would be like what, 1.1 million, we realized, right? And so it's still a risk, but like also you just set that now you've guaranteed yourself in the bottom. But then obviously we have David, which I think was, I mean, you guys like greatest of all time. I haven't seen him. I'm a huge fan already though, but he did not take the deal that was offered, which I thought was because that was the second highest number. So I thought that was actually, I was surprised that they even offered that, to be honest. Right. But then to not turn, because he's like, I know who has it. I don't know why in that mind. And again, this is where we go, we're not on the island. And in that split second, like, we don't know why Luke ever thought that reason, but we're not there, but I don't know why nothing transferred in his brain to be like, they definitely switched. He even saw them like kind of doing stuff in the water too. So I don't know.
Yeah. The only thing I can think of is if he thought it was against the rules to switch cases and you had to take what you took, because I'm sure they didn't explain that, or maybe they did. We don't know. Because even like we saw in season 1, Boston Rob did get caught on a rules thing, and
true.
So maybe that's in his mind. Like, honestly, I don't know. But the thing with that deal is, as a Survivor player, especially, I feel like you should know not to necessarily trust things and take them at face value. I would want to think, from what they showed us at least, that Sydney was being genuine because it's Sydney and she was just enamored with David. But like, how is David to know that? Because remember, this is like 5 minutes into the game, so they don't even know these people yet. So I can see where he's coming from there, but I definitely am like, you should have assumed they might have switched.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he was so focused on being the top team versus just being a safe team. And I think that that's kind of where that came into play. And from what you guys have described of David and kind of what I've already seen just in these first few minutes of him, is he's one of those that he's always on top. He wants to be like in control. He wants to have that, you know what I mean? And so I think that maybe was what's clouding his judgment a little bit. And so, Jake, would you have taken the deal? What are your thoughts? Would you have taken the deal? Would you have been like, you know what? No, I'm sticking with my gut here.
I probably would have like tried to take the deal just to like build some trust with somebody and like hope that they're not just trying to screw me over. We have seen David end up, instead of building trust before, he's tried to actually screw somebody over. In Sean, who was in Heroes versus Villains, he tries to screw up Sean in their first season together. So it's just really, really funny with that. But I would have tried to build trust and keep trust with someone. And David isn't going to know 5 minutes in that Sydney wants to eat him, as he said. So,
yeah. But I do think one benefit to taking the deal is, either way, you have some leverage, because if you take the deal, then you can at least trust them in that moment and you're safe. If you take the deal and they lied to you, okay, you're in the same position that you would have been anyway, but now you have the leverage and you can be like, look, these people lied to me in front of everybody. So they're showing they're playing hard and they're not trustworthy. And it kind of puts a target on them.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. So, I mean, obviously they end up in the bottom three. So now Sydney ends up with the $1 million case, so she has the decision of who she's sending to Temple. They go off to find out where they're living and staying, and this is where we really get to see some of these personalities come to life. I literally I should have known with the fiery redhead that we were gonna have some issues. Sydney is just obviously out there already. She's talking about, she's got all the power. She's almost like Fatal Attraction with David a little bit, and how he ended up in the dome with her, I would have been like, I need to switch rooms.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, so Sydney is going to be an interesting character to watch for sure. We get a little bit of Letty, and kind of her background. She said she was a pageant girl and did sports and all these types of things, broad shoulders and stuff that she said. Of course, we get some dynamic with Dixon and Parvati and David, which I'm sure we're going to get to more into. But where else were you guys going with these other people that we haven't really talked about yet before we dive into like the trio that is seemingly forming?
Right. Yeah, going in, like, I didn't really have any expectations for this person, but I really enjoyed them, and I guess it makes sense because I do enjoy good one-liners and confessionals and sassy moments on the shows. Seychelle, I did like her. I thought she has a good attitude for an entertaining reality TV character. I liked her confessionals. It was a bit interesting that in terms of gameplay, though, where she was like, I really don't want to go in, and David could kind of read that, like, she wanted him out. But as an entertaining character, I loved her so far.
Yeah.
I also liked another one I didn't really have the highest of expectations for, and I feel like they gave her a lot of confessional time, was Lachelle. I liked her a lot. I feel like she's bonding really well with people and like is going to be a good social player that everyone likes and wants to keep around.
Yeah, I mean, she compared herself to like Auntie,
Yeah,
and she
like,
does have, yeah.
Yeah, she's like, I'm not their auntie, but they want me to be that. So I liked her as well. I did find it interesting as well that Seychelle went up to Luke and is being like, you see how big of a threat David is, so like she was clocking David a little bit. Just she doesn't know he was on Australian Survivor yet, I don't think, but she at least recognizes the threat level he has. So I found that interesting. Other people, I mean, we didn't get too much of other people besides Dixon, so I think we should definitely get into Dixon now. I once like you guys had told me about him, and Shane had released some clips in the trailer for it. I was like, okay, so Dixon's gonna be really, really interesting, and I loved him in this premiere. I thought he was really fun, and like I really enjoyed his story, and so and I love the mom and dad and son dynamic. So
who knows where he ever got that idea?
No idea. No idea. So I mean, just for some backstory for some of the spectators, of course, like Shane and I come, and Jake, he was a player from Survivor Vanquish online reality games. And Dixon, we knew him even before Vanquish was Vanquish. I got to play a game with him, and we were a very solid alliance together. And Shane was our production member that was watching all of the craziness unfold with Dixon, that he's literally never changed. He is the same chaos person that he is. But even last night when they brought up his family, like I remember that's like one of the reasons why him and I bonded. And so I love that they were able to bring up Dixon's backstory a little bit. But like he kind of almost like, and I'm like, is this just because like I know him? But I felt like almost he kind of stole the show a little bit last night.
Yeah.
He was focused on a lot. Like he had a lot of confessionals. They kind of every camera angle, they always seemed to zoom in on him at some point. But we do see this dynamic between mom, like, but also it's so Dixon to sit at the like Shane, you brought this up last night. Just like you're so awkward. Why are you sitting over here like listening to their conversation without like getting
exactly?
But it's such a
who knows though, because like that scene I thought was edited brilliantly. Where they like are only on Parvati and Dave, and we don't see anything else. So who knows? Maybe Dixon was talking to someone else and they walked away. Like we don't know because it's reality TV. But the way they showed it makes sense for what we know of him. That he would just be sitting there awkwardly while they're like talking. And obviously he knows who Parvati is. I'm just like, in my head, how do you not know? And there with these two amazing legends.
Well, and so I think the thing that, especially knowing Dixon, is that, for one, he is a reality TV buff. He wants to hang out with Parvati. He wants to like be around. And obviously, I don't know if he knows David or not. I don't think he's ever watched Australian Survivor. He's never brought it up to us.
He has not.
And so, yeah, so he's sitting there. Obviously, Parvati's talking to the same person. Like, he's wanting to get in with Parvati just like this other person. But also knowing Dixon, he's sitting there as awkwardly as he is. But he has definitely got that ear over there listening. You know, he's like, let me just sit here and drink my coffee and just sit here. If I know Dixon, he's listening in on this conversation as best as he can. But to see them kind of then realize, like, oh, who's this random person? Let's bring them over. And then again, like, Parvati, she brings up that she's not the same Parvati that she was. She's now a mom. I mean, being a mom does change you. I mean, unless, of course, for me, I'm still as evil as I've always been, but it is what it is. But she, you know, she kind of had that moment where then they said, oh, we're mom and dad, and you're our son. And this is kind of where this trio begins. Yeah,
it's definitely interesting, too, because from reading interviews and stuff, like Parvati clearly talked to Boston Rob as their friends about last season, and definitely she watched it. So it's like she sees Aaron and she sees Boston Rob and Aaron and probably trying to recreate that a little bit. Yeah. Who knows if in her head she's like, this is a perfect person. I did it to Eric Reichenbach. This is my next target.
That's Eric.
And then David, like every time he plays, he always has like a buddy. And like Dixon is definitely the perfect buddy. And like we see in the trailer they released, he's piggyback riding him and all that.
Yeah. No, but I do want to jump back to Seychelle a little bit here, because I feel like there was a moment you guys said that you really enjoyed her. I did not. I felt that she was almost kind of abrasive at times. Like, we saw where she was very dismissive and was like, can you guys leave? I don't want to talk to you right now. Which I find, like, especially when you are trying in these early days to kind of build these bonds, because as we mentioned, if you're in the bottom, you don't want them to put you in there. You know what I mean? But also you don't want to be left vulnerable either. But I felt like that was kind of a moment where she kind of maybe have set herself up for the future here. And so, I don't know. Like I said, I look at kind of things like that, especially in these first early moments of bonding, that everyone's kind of trying to hang out. And I felt like she tried to alienate. And also, I don't find the people that she's alienating with, they probably should have recognized that too and been like, let's do this at bedtime, like pillow talk. What are you doing? Like, not here on like the dock for everyone to see. Like, let's go to the ocean and hang out, you know? So I'm interested to see how that kind of that dome, their sleeping arrangement alliance has worked. What do they call themselves? High Five or something?
Yeah. High Five.
I'm interested to see how that dynamic's going to work out for them later on down the road, because if they're going to start alienating themselves this publicly and this early, it could come back to bite them in the butt. So I'm kind of I'm interested to see, but also again, Dixon, David, and Parvati have made themselves very well known that they are hanging out, which is also something that's, you know, interesting to see how this is going to play out.
Yeah, I agree with you on Seychelle. I never said I liked her as a player, but I love her as a character. And there's a difference there. And I feel like this show is unique in the sense that, like, okay, if I were to think about doing like power rankings or whatever, I don't know yet. I don't have enough information on like gameplay, because I still don't fully know what's the optimal gameplay strategy for a game like this. But if I were to rank them based on character potential, it's probably a very different list there. And
100%.
David, number one, of course.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I don't know.
Dixon's got to be number one.
I'm biased, and I get that. So Dixon would probably be number one, but David too. But Seychelle's up there.
It's so funny for me though too, because it's like as I'm watching this episode last night, and Jake, you're not, I mean, you know of Dixon, but you are not as invested as Shane and I are. Right. And so that's where I kind of was like throughout this episode, I'm like, am I like just envisioning that this is kind of like he's like this head of the star of the show, if you will. And I'm interested to see, because of course we already talked about earlier in this episode that fans can be pretty toxic. So I kind of want to see how America receives Dixon. So I'm really excited to kind of see that. And I will be, of course, the first person to back him. I will be in all the fights on Facebook to defend Dixon. But It'll be interesting to see how America, because obviously we're sitting here talking about character, like, you know what I mean, like Seychelles. I can't wait to see how everybody else is receiving Dixon, but not only just Dixon, but everybody else that aren't known like Parvati and David.
Right.
Yeah.
I think at this point he's likely seen as very endearing and probably going to get some fans because, like, obviously people are watching for Parvati and David. So if you're working with them, then that's going to help your case. Knowing what I know about him, and you know the same thing, he is 100%, like, I will bet money that during this season he does something dumb, like trash talk someone, and then they're right there. Like, something 100%. Is going to happen.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm also surprised that
50%.
Oh, yes. I'm also surprised that he kept his shirt on as long as he did. So anybody that knows Dixon, it's a miracle that man kept his shirt on for as long as he did. Jake, what were your kind of first impressions of seeing Dixon?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, I connected to him immediately. I mean, being the quote-unquote nerd, just impressions of him. And I think Joe said on our hap that, like, he was, like, the Aaron type. Like, they were casting him to be this season's Aaron. And I liked Aaron last season. So, like, I really was going to connect to that type of person again. I found Dixon endearing, and I also found him hilarious. Like, when... we'll get to Luke's elimination, but when Luke got eliminated and you go to after and Dixon's just talking about he screwed himself and just like everything is true and he's just being so blunt, and even Parvati is like somehow is like not liking how like cold Dixon is being, but I found it hilarious because like it's true. I mean, Luke screwed himself, so that's not an inaccurate statement.
Well, but also I said too, like before we even started, I was like, pot meet kettle, like what? Come on, Parvati.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But let's get into Temple here. We see that Sydney decides to send in Luke. Obviously, she's trying to protect David, but also I don't think that Sydney is all quite there, understanding that like if he does win, he's sending David home. So like. This is like a no-win situation for you. Like if he wins, then David's gone. If you put David in and he loses, David's gone. So I get where she was kind of torn here. But this also, she was shown so much. They were bringing this up afterwards. She needs to stop talking. Like, stop talking. You're making so much of like yourself. Like even, when, she was standing there and Joe's talking to her about like, you were the one making this. She's like, yep, it's all me. I made that decision to do the and I'm like, what on earth is happening here? Like, what reality are you living on, Sydney? But we continuously see her put her foot in her mouth during Temple. Like, not even getting to Luke yet. We've got her continuously putting her foot in her mouth throughout that. And I think, again, stop alienating yourself, people, this early on. So going into her, I think I want to hear your guys' thoughts on her, but then even just combining it, we see Luke, obviously, just again, he does not know when to stop either. And made a horrible, horrible decision of not taking in a fantastic deal, and then obviously getting himself eliminated. So what are your guys' thoughts on Sydney, like just putting her foot in her mouth? We got Luke, we got a couple other people tossing their ideas. What are your guys' thoughts on Temple?
Yeah, I feel like Luke... So they find Luke in Wisconsin. Well, I don't even know what's the airport he would go to in Wisconsin. Milwaukee, I guess. Probably. So he's probably going to the Milwaukee airport. They buy him his ticket to fly to Panama. She's like, nah, I'm not. I'm going to throw this ticket away. I'm going to go to Trainwreck Central Airport. I'm going to take that airplane to like China and take the long way to Panama, and this will work for me. Sydney, I don't remember where she's from. She gets to the she doesn't even get to the airport. She gets in her car that she said she lived in. She goes to Arkham Asylum, spends a little time there, and then goes over to Panama. And if you frame it that way, it makes sense.
Like, do I get to come out here and be everything I want to be? You guys are like, maybe not. And then you're over here just... Oh.
Yeah, she thought it was Halloween, and she was trying to be Harley Quinn from that.
Oh,
and she thought David was her Joker.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I'm not prepared for all of that just came from Shane right now, and I'm living for it. Yes, they are there. Yep. All right, we're gonna. I'm gonna leave it with Shane. But yes, it is something to see. But again, these characters are like that's what I mean. That's TV. We say it even when we're casting. We're like, this person's gonna make great, TV for even Vanquish. So I get that. I get that. But like also, you guys could have casted better people.
Right. And like, okay, it sounds a little mean, but like, I loved this episode. I loved watching them, and they made it. So like, yes, I don't agree with your strategic plan. I don't necessarily think you're a good player, but you are making this show.
Oh yeah,
like, you have a purpose there. Amazing. Yeah. Like Luke, terrible player, but amazing television. I'm glad they got it. I don't understand why all these shows want like a train wreck first boot, but Deal or No Deal succeeded and they got it. They copied Survivor. And honestly, like Luke is better than the ones we've seen on Survivor.
But I think my other biggest pet peeve here is I think I said this last night watching, and I'll sugarcoat it a little bit better than I did last night. But you see kind of like this trend with Luke kind of being a almost like very selfish person, if you will. Like we saw him being like, oh, I'm just jumping right off the zip line, don't care to even talk to who I'm working with. Oh, I'm not listening to them. We're not even discuss what case I'm taking. Just very kind of selfish moves here. And again, like with his deal of a very significant deal, and he's like, oh, I could put $200,000 in our case. No, I'm gonna keep going, and we end up like you're gonna lose. Like, dude, like what are you doing?
Right.
So
that was just dumb because one, it's a lot of money to add to the pot, but at least my thinking as of now with this game is like, I don't care how much is added to the pot. I care about my safety. But he not only was adding a lot to the pot, but he had 67% odds of making a good deal. Like, you're not getting better odds than that because even if he keeps going and knocks off another number, now his odds are 50%.
Right.
So it's your offer goes up, but like your odds went down. So take that deal.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just one of those things. I mean, we got a little bit of his backstory too. I felt like I saw a trend there. So, and like I said, I'm sugarcoating, but I just saw a trend there. And I mean, hey, I know how bad people want to be on the shows. Like we've wanted to be, like all of us have wanted and tried out and auditioned and things like that. So kudos to him for getting on. It was very short lived and like, see you later.
Short lived, but memorable. We're going to keep talking about it. So he should be happy. Like last season, I remember Branson as the first boot, but like, for whatever reason, the Asian character is usually my favorite and don't know why, so that's why I remember him. But like, how many people remember him? Or how many people remember like Jamil, the second boot? We're here, Luke, in a year from now, 2 years from now, we're going to remember this.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if we're comparing first boots between the two seasons, I think Branson had potential to be at least an okay player because he was at least showing that he had strategic sense. So if I'm comparing like as players, I think Branson could have been a way better player than Luke. I don't think there's any question. I mean, Survivor saw Jelinski in Survivor 46 and we're like, let's find somebody just like Jelinski, and they got Luke. So
well, I think too, I mean, even like Shane, you brought up Jamil too. Like obviously Jamil's played Vanquish too. And I think it's like one of those things, again, edits, like a lot of these edits like really either work for them or don't work for them, because we saw Jamil and I like his character in Vanquish. I'm like, oh, he would have been so fun if we would have got to see more of him on DONDI. So the edits I think are another thing. So we sadly or not so sadly see Luke take off, and they get a whole whopping $1 to their pot. We get see a little bit of their hanging out afterwards, kind of talking about what happened. And then we meet up for the next day where they're getting ready to do another challenge. And then we see a boat come in. Of course, we all know what this is about to be, but talk to me about your guys' thoughts on Dr. Will Kirby showing up to DONDI.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see, like, because we've seen now, like, most of the players know who Parvati is. Maybe not all of them. Nobody knows who David is. Do they know who Dr. Will is? And I don't know that it's going to matter because the way he comes in, like, clearly he announces who he is. And, like, they kind of know, okay, this is a reality star legend. So I'm wondering how that's going to affect the game. Like, are people going to want to work with him, take him out? Are they going to assume, like, him and Parvati are working together because they don't realize David is a reality star? But also Will seems antagonistic just from the way he plays Big Brother and like what we've seen in the previews. is he just going to out Parvati immediately?
Well, see,
Because
that's
he
what I
could do
think.
that too.
Right, yeah. Honestly, it's going to be something. Jake, what are your thoughts? Because you haven't watched much Big Brother, right? If I remember correctly.
I haven't watched much Big Brother. I've done research, and I did watch Big Brother 2, so I did watch Will's.
Okay, so you do know Will. Okay, so what are your thoughts of Will coming in?
I think Dr. Will, I mean, he's one of my favorite favorite Big Brother contestants, him and Dan Gieseling. And
Hey, Dan. Love Dan.
And it's just like, I think it's just because like Will has just such a fun way of looking at the game strategically, and Will's gonna make it interesting no matter what, even if he is like playing so hard as like the villain. And I just find him fun, so I'm excited to see him. I was excited when he was announced, even though he's coming in late, which I mean, later on in Tribe of Nerds, this week we're gonna start Traitors season 3, and we're gonna be talking about Boston Rob entering late. So it's like all these like big names, or both these big names, are entering in like one episode later, or later into the game at least, and it's just very, very interesting. It's like, did Will and Rob just were they so worried about being first boots that they were just like, okay, let's like come in a little later so we have more of a chance?
All right, here's where I'm not going to sugarcoat some stuff here. All right, so buckle up, y'all. Here we go. All right, so first of all, I think this is absolute trash on both Dondi and Traitors to do this, because if I am a player, yeah, give me an extra day. Like, I didn't have to go to the first like even have a chance to go to the first temple. I just think, again, if you guys are two of the greats, you don't need, and granted, like, I'm sure you guys will discuss this when you do Traitors, but if you are two of the greats, you should be able to go in first day. You should be able to get out of anything if you're this great of a player. So granted, we don't know if that's the case for either one of them, if that's what, why they're
at least with Dondi, there was a interview in one of the magazines with one of the executive producers, and they mentioned somebody had a medical issue last minute, so they had to bring in Will.
Yes.
So it sounds like it wasn't planned,
but yes.
But now I'm like, who was it supposed to be?
I know, yeah. But will they be on Dondi 3? But and yes, I will say that yes, that has come out, and we are aware that he's probably a fill-in here. But again, I don't know. I have thoughts on those two that I will stop and sugarcoat a little bit more. So, but I just feel like this is such a trash move especially on them. You guys are supposed to be the greats. Like, okay, pull your big boy pants on. Let's go. Let's like fight it out. But Will coming in, we've seen obviously some previews. He's going to cause a lot of chaos. I think the reason why I'm not such a huge fan of Will is I think we would butt heads, and we would butt heads pretty significantly. Where I try to be not a type of a fighter person. I will fight for, anybody that I love or care about. I will fight if I feel like somebody's being wronged. But I do try and be like a very peaceful person. I know some people will probably laugh at that. I actually am, I promise. I'm actually a nice person. I promise. But I just feel like he would get under my skin like big time, and there's nothing that could shake that. So I'm really excited because like Chaos Dixon I can't wait to see these previews that they've hinted at. This seems like a rivalry. We've got this with Parvati. It seems like this is going to happen. Like David, it seems like he's just coming in guns a-blazing. So it's going to be great TV. If I was on the island, I'd be like really irritated.
Yeah. I don't know if, just based on how they've shown him being antagonistic, I feel like it's not even worth keeping him. So he's probably going to be a target. And hopefully luck's on his side if he faces the banker, or if he doesn't face the banker and whoever does wants him out, then he's gone. Because in the other shows, it's like if someone's antagonistic, take them to the end. It helps you win. But here it doesn't. You literally not.
Nothing. Yeah, it literally doesn't matter. So, yeah, I mean, I'm excited for us to do recap of part 2. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot to talk about, especially with Will coming in and seeing that dynamic. So that will be exciting. But yeah, for now, I mean, very solid first episode. I know that, I mean, we have friends that are on Dondi 1, from Dondi 1 to Dondi 2. I feel like they're both very decent seasons just from first episode in, because you're seeing, for Dondi was the first ever one, was like the first ever, we didn't know what to even expect. Now Dondi 2, we have something that we're trying to expect, but then they're throwing in little twists here. So I think both seasons very solid. And I can't wait to see where the season goes.
Yeah, I thought the little preview they showed at the end was great for what's coming next episode and beyond. And it's definitely interesting in the preview that they show Will getting in a fight with Parvati, Dave, and Dixon, and those are supposedly. It's still interesting to me that like they showed that three forming this like family. And did they steal the idea from Coach and Self Pacific? Nobody knows. I mean, Parvati played with Coach, but someone tells me she's not trying to emulate him, but you never know. So they showed that, but it wasn't like, oh, we're working together. Like they didn't state that, but it's like unstated that they are this alliance. It just seems based on how they've shown it, it's going to play a big impact on the season. And it's interesting because they showed some people clocking it and being like, oh, those three are working together. Like he's calling them mom and dad. But then it's also interesting that they showed Dixon like kissing Letty's hand and Parvati and Dave are seeing it. Because in one part of me, I'm like, well, that would actually be a really good strategy. If you see people clocking you, go pretend to like be with someone else. But knowing Dixon, no, you know, he's smart, but like I could see him just making like a little error like that. He'll get out of it probably. But yeah, that was interesting. And hopefully it doesn't cause distrust between him, Parvati, and Dave. And something also that's interesting to think about, and I've heard other podcasts talk about, is it's probably inevitable Parvati and Dave are going to get in some little tiff, especially if one outs the other. What happens to Dixon when that happens and they get quote unquote divorced?
Who gets custody of Dixon?
Right? Exactly. So he could have some power in the game in terms of socially. Like if that happens, he can play both sides, bring others in, and all that stuff. So I'm excited to see that for sure.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I did enjoy DONDI season 1. I mean, we've also, like you guys said, we've had a lot of them in the Vanquish community, so I've gotten to play with or meet some of them: Miranda, Jamil, Kim, Aaron. Like, so it's pretty cool to be able to, you know, meet these people or play with these people. So, but I'm very excited for the rest of season 2. I think it's going to be good. This cast is at least interesting.
Yes.
So it's gonna be good TV, and like I would say definitely David and Dixon are my favorites right now. So
yeah, one person that we haven't touched on, and I feel like they got not much content, but in the trailers they have some content, and I can see interesting things happening. Is CK? I feel like she was very quiet this time, although it was interesting that they showed a confessional where she's like, I'm a banker and I know math, but I'm not telling people. But then in the temple, she's like, Sydney, you're an idiot. Like you're saying it's a 33% odds, it's 67% odds, which is simple math, but like you're kind of showing your cards a little bit there. But it seems like based on the trailer, she's going to get into some confrontations with people, and it'll be interesting to see how she reacts to that and the others react. Because yeah, it's definitely a quiet episode for her.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see more. Obviously, they hinted at like a little showman's happening too, so it's going to be exciting to see more dynamics with the other cast. So I'm sure we'll have some words about them too once we get.
Yeah. Do we have any thoughts on the banker? Like, who do we think's the banker? Because I had original thoughts that if it's a woman, so it's like, okay, well, who would it be? Well, the only one that makes sense is Jordan, winner of last season, but. With all due respect to Jordan, when they showed the clip of them reacting pretty strongly when they see who the banker is, I'm like, would they react that strongly to Jordan? I don't know. So another thing, is it some big celebrity that's in the NBC network, like Oprah, Rosie O'Donnell, or someone, I don't know, America's Got Talents on NBC, The Voice, like, is there anyone big there? Like Kelly Clarkson, like, who could it be? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting because I mean, yes, that would be. I do see it kind of being a major reaction for it just to be Jordan. However, I mean, obviously season 1 they've all watched and wanted to play season 2 because of watching season 1. So maybe, but or also just like it's a reaction of shock, like oh my gosh, like that. Maybe next season it's one of us. You know what I mean? So maybe it's that too. Because I definitely thought it could have been Jordan as well. It could definitely be, you know, somebody that we see on the NBC network, like you're saying, Shane, that it's going to be a bigger celebrity kind of But I mean, also they have to compete with like the drop that was Howie, right?
Yeah.
So they have to make it something as iconic as Howie coming out. Like,
Right.
I know that I originally thought Howie was probably the banker going into last season just
Oh,
because
Howie had to be. The
Yeah,
leader. I
we
feel like
knew-
it was the worst.
I mean, I feel like it was so obvious, but even him coming out though, I was still like, oh,
yeah, exactly.
Howie. Yeah.
there's still like a reaction. So
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's what I'm saying. It still could be Jordan, but it could still also be like somebody even bigger too. So it'll be fun
Right.
to see.
I'll only accept Rosie O'Donnell if she comes out sinning like the Survivor Marquesas reunion show.
For sure. Anything else that before we wrap up?
Well,
Yeah, who do we think's our like standout or player of the season?
Oh, that's
or
right.
of the episode,
Yeah.
character of the episode. I guess I can start. I'll say two because I'll have my one, which is clearly biased, and I'll put on my objective hat and pick my other. So Dixon for sure. Like I just don't know that I could not say that, and it's probably gonna be every episode that he's in. So I'll say that. But like honestly, though, he did even being objective. Like he did really have a good episode, and there's a lot of potential, I think, to do well in this. Just getting insulated with the two of the greatest Survivor players ever, like having them on your side to help you and like learn from them could be a really big thing. But besides Dixon, I think I have to say Dave, which is still biased, but like again, I think
all the spectators saw this an hour ago for that one.
Parvati's doing good, and I almost want to say her, but like I just feel like Dave being the unknown is really helpful to him. That they don't know who he is, and they don't know what he's capable of. And like we saw Parvati, her reputation now, like in Winners at War, she couldn't overcome. Dave had a huge reputation, and it didn't matter. He still did even better things when he played Australian All-Stars. Right. So the fact that he's already done that once, let's see him do it again.
Yeah. Jake, what are your takeaways?
Well, I'm kind of the same as Shane. Like I love Dixon, but I'm really pulling for David just because I think he's the most entertaining. I think that his game is just so fun to watch. I think with like a more dynamic cast, like he is surrounded with this time as opposed to Australian Survivor All-Stars, as much as like he played such a great game there. Some of that cast was so passive that it made the show kind of dip down just because nobody else was really doing anything. And this, I don't see that happening. I see he's surrounded by a great cast that's also gonna show their best around him while he's doing all this fun stuff. So I'm really excited for both, but I'll say David, I guess.
Okay. For me, obviously, I have to do Dixon. But I always like to pick like the not so obvious and the underdog. I did think it was gonna be Sydney on the boat ride, and then that girl like like fatal attraction, stage 5 clinger, run far away. So I think I might go with. I'm gonna go with Letty. I think. I'm gonna say I'm feeling a Letty. I'm feeling a Letty. So somebody just not as obvious. I mean, obviously she had a little bit in this first episode, so I don't think she's like completely unknown. So I'm gonna go with Letty.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I also think Philip and Lachelle are ones that we really need to keep an eye on because I see big things from them. I see them going very far, if not one of them winning.
Yes, agree. I do like Philip too.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, out of like the people that are left, I feel like the people who I'm not looking to go much farther, like Rock, I don't see going like any farther.
Yeah.
Got like no content this episode other than wearing a tiger shirt, so he's
like the Tiger King.
Yeah, he's Joe Exotic of this season.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, love it. I'm excited. I'm excited to see. I want to get to know these players more, so I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we wrap up, I mean, Survivor Vanquish Firestarters has just started. So if you guys wanted to give a little bit of a tease for that, obviously it's we haven't lost anybody on the cast yet. So if you guys just want to talk about that real quick.
Yeah, so I guess for anyone that doesn't know, Vanquish Online Reality Games is a organization that we are a part of, running, founded, what have you, that puts on social strategy games modeled after our favorite reality TV shows like Survivor, Big Brother, recently Traders, DONDI might be coming, you never know. All played from the comfort of your own home. We often do have reality stars playing in our games, especially mini versions of our games. And what I think sets us apart from other games out there is our reliance on raising money for charity. We really care about giving back and creating a community of like-minded people that love reality TV, maybe feel a little like on the nerdy side out there, don't have their place as much, and just really care about doing good things for others. So all of our games are meant to raise money for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. But when we have reality stars play, they get to come in with their own charities and raise money for those. So we've just started our 13th Survivor season. It's called Fire Starters. It's all new players to the community, and we are excited to see what happens there.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm really excited for this cast. It's probably, I mean, one of essentially just from the start of this, essentially one of the, I think maybe potentially the best strategic cast that we've seen. They're already starting, which is crazy. So you'll definitely want to join VIP if you want to. But yeah, the Firestarters twist of the season is it's kind of a shot in the dark, but a little bit more to it than that. If they feel they're in danger, they have to play their Firestarter, and if they are correct, they then have to do a fire making challenge against anybody of their choosing on that tribe. So it's going to be a really fun season to see how they maneuver through the fire starter. So definitely join us. Come donate to Make-A-Wish. It's a great thing, and you'll have a lot of fun. So,
yeah, absolutely. Cannot sing enough praises about you guys and everything that Vanquish does. So it's incredible. So thank you. Yeah, so later this week we'll also have our Traders Season 3 recap starting. Matt and Austin are going to join me for this first recap of Season 3. I believe it's the first 3 episodes, actually, that are starting this off. So very excited. We'll get to talk about Tony, Carolyn Weiger, Jeremy Collins, and Boston Rob, among the rest of the cast, including other reality stars, Zac Efron's brother, like...
sorry. I don't know that got fraud either. It's fine.
But yeah, we'll get to it. So, anything else before we sign off?
Nada.
All right. We will see you all next time on the Tribe of Nerds.
Bye.